Okay, if we continue with real numbers. So the real numbers are simply the numbers that exist on a number line. So all of the subsets and classifications that we talked about have a location somewhere on a number line. They can be plotted or placed there. A couple things regarding a number line that you should be familiar with. First, 0 is called the origin. Everything to the right of 0 has a positive value. Everything to the left of 0 has a negative value. That includes infinity. So infinity can be in the positive direction. It can be in the negative direction. As we get further along and we start to include infinities in answers, when we type this online, we'll express infinity as INF. So we have positive infinity, it's just INF, negative infinity, negative INF. Right, so when you're looking at the plotting and ordering of numbers, if you were given a set of numbers to plot, so 0, negative root 7, 3/2, 2, and 3/8. If I asked you to plot and order these, okay, all you need to be able to do is, again, approximate about where they would land on a number line. Okay, so in looking at this, you don't need to necessarily use your calculator to find values. Okay? If you just know about where they fall. So which of these numbers is probably easiest to plot? Okay. 0 is probably the easiest to plot, right? And then what after that? 2, right? So those are whole numbers. They have the markings directly on the number line. Okay, then after that, the next one that's probably easiest to plot is 3/2. 3/2 is what value? 1.5. So it's going to be halfway between 1 and 2. What about 3/8? That's going to be partway between 0 and 1. A little bit closer to 0 than 1, so there's 3/8. And so that leaves this final number, negative root 7. So when you look at radicals, if you have to estimate where it falls, look to see between which two perfect square values inside the radical this would fall between. So 7 is close to what perfect squares? What perfect square is less than 7? The first perfect square less than 7 is 4, right? Which has a square root of 4, which is 2. Okay, but the 4 is less than that, and what's the perfect square that's larger than 7? 9. Square root of 9 is 3, right? So this number, root 7, has to fall somewhere between 2 and 3. Is 7 closer to 9 or closer to 2? I'm sorry, closer to 4 or closer to 9? A little bit closer to 9. So when you look at this, it's in the negative direction. It's a little bit closer to the square root of 9, which is the 3. So it's going to be, again, slightly toward the negative 3, but that is where your value would be located. Again, the negative falls outside the radical, so the negative outside simply means it's to the left of the origin, to the left of 0. Okay, if you were asked to order these, once you plot them, you can then see what the order would be. And if you're writing these on the computer, we'd start with the furthest to the left, so negative SQRT, remember, is the designation for square root, comma 0, comma 3/8, comma 3/2, comma 2. So this would be your solution if you were ordering these online. Anytime you list a set of answers, please do not use any spaces. Just separate them by commas, no spaces. If you do use a space, it won't mark it as correct. It'll mark it as wrong, so be careful on that. All right, a couple things involving the number line, just terminology to recall. The inverses, so the additive inverse and multiplicative inverse, you guys have some common names that you use for those or that are more familiar than these terms, so let's discuss that. The additive inverse is simply the opposite of a number. Okay, so if your number is A, then the additive inverse is negative A. Okay, so again, it's very simple in that respect. Okay, the multiplicative inverse is better known as the reciprocal. Okay, and so this states that if you have A, then the reciprocal or the multiplicative inverse is 1 over A. Here you invert the number, you switch the numerator and the denominator. So a better way to maybe state this is to use a fraction to start with. So if you say if A over B, then the reciprocal or the multiplicative inverse is going to be B over A. You simply flip the entire fraction.